Okay, everybody, and welcome to this class guide on Shaman. This is normal Shaman, not evolved Shaman. I think that normal Shaman is probably applicable in more scenarios than evolved Shaman. We will probably be doing an evolved Shaman guide at some point, but for now, this is the simple Shaman guide. Shaman is a tier 1 class obtained from Arcane Grove. You need to get rank 10 rep in Arcane Grove to be able to get Shaman and evolved Shaman. You also need to get rank 10 Arcane Grove in order to get Stone Crusher. So, many people are going to get Shaman simply because Stone Crusher is one of the most powerful and most popular classes in the game, and Shaman is not bad in its own right, able to hold up pretty well in both farming, soloing, and PvP. So with that said, let's get into the enhancements. Shaman's enhancements are a little bit weird because a few of these numbers get pretty close. So we're going to show off time to kill Red Dragon. This is going to be the pure DPS output test in single target situations. So, as you can see here, Full Wizard and 3 Wiz 1 Luck come very, very close, within just a few seconds of each other. And considering that all of the other numbers are within 10 seconds of each other, these two are very, very close. And I think that the reason that 3 Wiz 1 Luck came out on top in this test is simply because of just a string of good luck that I had 2 times where I had very good times. I had one test where it was 31 seconds, and the other test that was 33 seconds. Those are both very low, and I think that I simply just got a good string of crits that allowed me to burst down the dragon very quickly. And I think that that's not something that really is considered the average, which is why the 31-second time isn't on here. If you guys don't know, my testing policy for how I come up with these numbers is it's a average of 5 times where I throw out the high and low, because I consider those to be extremes and unrepresentative of the whole. Full Wizard or 3 Wiz 1 Luck is pretty good just for raw damage output against relatively lower health mobs, so things under about 50,000 health. And I think that it really just comes down to dumb luck as to which one's going to come out on top for you, but I think that on average, Wizard is going to come out on top. I just had a pretty good string of crit luck when I was using the 3 Wiz 1 Luck build. Now we're going to talk about farming. This is time to clear Bright Fortress up to Yulgar. So I killed all the mobs from the start of Bright Fortress up to Yulgar. And this is the times to do that. Keep in mind, all of these tests are using level 65 enhancements, no awe enhancement. As you guys can see, every build running luck gets worse. The more luck you were running in your build, the lower these times got, or the higher rather. So definitely for pure farming, where you're doing a lot of hits against a lot of mobs, consistency is a big deal. Consistency is very key in farming. And so you can definitely see in this test that Full Wizard definitely comes out on top. Shaman skills are a little bit weird and have some weird interactions, so I want to be at Blood Titan here, properly show off them on an enemy that has a little bit more health that's not going to die right away. So let's get into the skills and stats here. Shaman stat screen, it has a really high hit chance. This is also honestly amazing. Having a very, very high hit chance is really great, especially when it comes down to PvP and soloing, that these are very, very useful. It also helps with farming, but on farming, when you're fighting hundreds and hundreds of mobs, it averages out a little bit easier, and you don't notice missing those hits as much as you do with things like PvP or soloing. So this very high hit chance is actually a very notable skill here. I tend not to pay too much attention to the stats in a lot of these guides, but I just want to draw some attention to that hit chance, as it is pretty exceptionally high. We're going to get into the abilities. Ancestor's Flame is your first ability. 10 mana, 4-second cooldown, deals moderate damage to 3 targets. It applies Scorched Spirit, and its damage is increased by Elemental Embrace. Your second ability is Hydrophobia. 15 mana, 4-second cooldown. It deals moderate damage to 3 targets, and if the target is affected by Scorched Spirit, you are healed based on a portion of the damage dealt. The healing from this ability is also increased by Elemental Embrace. This is something I want to point out, that the healing on this ability is increased by Elemental Embrace, not the damage. It may look that way, but that is simply because Hydrophobia does double damage to a target affected by Scorched Spirit. We can show that off real quick. Hydrophobia normally doing 500 damage. If I apply Scorched Spirit, it's now critting for almost 2,500, doing significantly more damage. So I just want to point that out. Your third ability is Dry Lightning. It costs 40 mana on a 16-second cooldown, which is a little bit more than many of your other abilities. It deals heavy damage, doing 675% of weapon damage on a low roll to the target. This damage is also boosted by Elemental Embrace. Your final ability, Elemental Embrace. Elemental Embrace is the key ability here when it comes to soloing and sometimes in PvP, really allowing you to do some crazy things. Elemental Embrace costs 60 mana on a 16-second cooldown and has a handful of effects outside of just the text that it says here. The ability cannot miss, which is awesome. The ability does light damage to the target, not doing a significant amount of damage, but it's guaranteed damage, which is always good for PvP. It applies the buff Elemental Embrace. This ability removes all bonus evasion and critical strike chance that the target has applied. So if you're playing in PvP against something like a Blade Master or a Lightcaster who's buffed their stats pretty significantly, especially in those areas, you can use Elemental Embrace and strip those all away. And this can be very powerful in PvP if timed correctly. In addition, Elemental Embrace makes it so that the other Shaman spells are now more powerful. And this damage and healing increases the more of these abilities that you cast. The effect, the buff of Elemental Embrace lasts for 60 seconds, a minute. So it's a pretty long time before you have to think about reapplying this effect, but you will have to reapply this effect every minute. Each time you cast Ancestor's Flames or Dry Lightning, it will increase their damage by 10%. This stacks infinitely, as long as you keep the buff up. It also increases the healing that you get from Hydrophobia, but it is by a smaller amount. It is not by that big 10% number. So, with Shaman, as long as you can keep up Elemental Embrace, the damage from this class will continue to stack infinitely forever. Because Hydrophobia's damage is doubled, and because you only get the heal on Hydrophobia if somebody is affected by Scorched Spirit, you generally want to try to apply Ancestor's Flame to somebody first in a fight before you use Hydrophobia. This is just something to note when you're farming or doing PvP, that you want to try and use your Ancestor's Flame before using Hydrophobia whenever possible. So in a fight here, we're going to start off by using our 5 to allow us to start stacking. Because while you can gain up stacks of Scorched Spirit, they don't do anything unless you have Elemental Embrace applied. As you can see, as we move through, Elemental Embrace is going to increase the damage that Ancestor's Flame is doing each time. We're up to 2,000 damage on a crit, almost 1,000 damage base. Now, it was 900, now we're 1,000. Up to 2,700 on a crit, 3,000 on a crit, and this is going to keep growing forever. As you see, my stacks have now fallen off. I'm back to 500 damage, I'm back to normal damage, so it's been a minute, and Elemental Embrace has fallen off, so I'm back to normal damage here. So, now that I've shown off Elemental Embrace and how that works, how the Scorched Earth and all that things work, let's go into the actual Blood Titan fight for realsies, and I will talk about soloing a little bit more specifically there. Now that we're at Blood Titan, we're going to do the actual Blood Titan fight for real. I kind of did about half of the fight there, simply by showing off Elemental Embrace, but I want to talk a little bit more about soloing specifically. So, when you're playing with Shaman, you do need to keep a pretty close eye on your health bar. As you can see, I'm going to use Elemental Embrace, we're going to stack Scorched Spirit, and we're going to continue to heal. I'm going to try not to use my abilities on cooldown whenever I can. This is simply to conserve mana. As long as I can keep my heal over time ticking from Hydrophobia, and I can continue to try and stack the Scorched Earth, I can continue to try and stack the Scorched Spirit stacks, I really continue to do this forever, slowly trying to keep my mana up. We're going to try and reapply Elemental Embrace to keep that stack up, and we're going to keep going. We're going to keep doing more damage, and we're going to keep going. If you watch the heal over time over the course of the video, the heal over time should slowly be increasing as well, although definitely not by as much as Scorched Spirit is going to be increasing the damage from Ancestor's Flame. And that was the fight. As you could see, my damage got pretty ridiculous there. I was up to a little over 4,000 damage without a crit on my 2. As you can see, I never used my 4 simply because it costs so much mana, and while it does ridiculous amounts of damage, it really does. When you get that huge damage buff on it and you add in how much damage it does base, if this thing is hitting for like 1,500 normally without a crit, almost 4,000 normally on a crit, when you start getting in those like 500% damage increases, this thing hits super hard, but it just costs so much mana that's not really usable. As you could see, health wasn't an issue in that fight. Health was not an issue. Hydrophobia was ticking so often and healing us for so much that health really wasn't a problem against normal Blood Titan, that we were just healing so much so consistently that Blood Titan really couldn't put too much of a chink in our health. That he could hit us pretty hard occasionally, but we were just immediately healing it back, that there really wasn't a lot that he could do. Mana is a bit of an issue here, and I imagine going into the Ultra Blood Titan fight, that mana is going to be a little bit more of an issue, because I am going to have to lean on Hydrophobia's healing a little bit more. So I'll show off the Ultra Blood Titan fight, and we'll see you guys after that. As you can see, we died pretty quickly, and that's simply because while Shaman's healing is consistent, it's not big. Basically able to stay even on health with him. That he would hit me, and then I would heal, and he would hit me, and I would heal. And I would basically hovering around half health, that every time he'd hit me, I'd immediately heal that back up. And I was staying relatively even until he went into Rage mode. As soon as he went into Blood Rage mode, he was hitting me for 1,000 damage a hit, 800 damage a hit, and I just died. But unfortunately, while Shaman's healing is very good, it's very good, very consistent. It's not burst healing. It's not the kind of healing that you need to survive Blood Titan. The kind of healing that you need to survive Ultra Blood Titan and some of these really hard-hitting bosses is burst healing. You need healing that can, you can take 1,000 damage and immediately heal back 1,500. That's the kind of healing that you need for these kind of bosses. Unfortunately, Shaman just doesn't have that for this kind of boss. Although for many bosses that are not hitting this ridiculously hard, many of the lower bosses and things like Boss Challenge, Shaman can handle totally fine. I think Shaman can do up to like the 3rd boss in Boss Challenge with relative ease. And because of its ridiculous levels of damage output, once you start getting your stacks up, Shaman's a very good soloing class, a very competent soloing class, a very competent farming class, because of the fact that Ancestor's Flames and Hydrophobia deal such good, such consistent damage, and the heal over time is constantly going, meaning you're basically never at threat of dying from taking damage, and you're putting out such constant, consistent damage by only ever using 2 buttons that cost almost no mana, that these cost 10 and 15 mana respectively on such a low cooldown, that you're very good at farming, very good at soloing. And those are really the 2 primary strengths of this class. We're going to get into PvP now. I'm going to show off that a little bit. So, Shaman is interesting in PvP, as it's pretty good. Unfortunately, you struggle a lot against classes with consistent stuns. Dodge-based classes are not too much of an issue for you, as your 5th ability can basically negate them entirely, removing all of their dodge and crit chance. And this is very powerful, although unfortunately, classes with crits, which are the majority of good PvP classes, are a big issue for you. Void High Lord Impact has a very good, very consistent crit, and while that class is not out at the time of this video recording, it will be out, and people will start to get their hands on it within the next few days and within the next week, and it is going to be a factor in the PvP metagame that we're going to have to deal with. Things like Blazebinder and their Vindicator of They, the Collector, Scarlet Sorceress. These are all classes that have very good, very consistent stuns, and are unfortunately going to be able to prevent you from really ever healing. Because your heal is a 2-ability combo, good players are going to be able to see that you used your first ability and stun you before you can use your second ability and get off that heal, effectively making your ability as a whole useless, because your first ability doesn't do that much damage on its own, and Hydrophobia does really good damage, but only when comboed with your first ability, and the heal is only gained when comboed with your first ability. So at the end of the day, considering how powerful many PvP classes are, and how consistent and how prevalent stuns are in PvP, you're really going to have a rough time if facing up against any of those. And many stun classes are all over the place in PvP. If you're finding a day where you're facing against a whole bunch of Blade Masters and Ninjas and Chunins and Thief of Hours, then you're going to do great because you can simply remove their dodge chance and wreck them. But if you're finding yourself up against Vindicator of Days and Lightcasters and some other classes, well, you're going to have a bit of a tough time. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it goes. As much as I hate it, it's kind of how it is. The class performs a little bit better in Blood Brawl, where it can blend into the crowd to an extent and kind of hide behind everybody else and pop up its abilities, stack up its damage, and start spamming at getting the multi-target damage in. Because you're hitting multiple people, you're able to start healing for more off of your heal over time on Hydrophobia, and overall I think this class is a little bit better suited for Blood Brawl than it is for 1v1s, and while it's not bad in 1v1s by any stretch of the imagination, it's nowhere near as good as many other classes in the tier with it, classes that are either single rep classes or classes that are also relatively easy to obtain in this vein. So I think that Shaman is interesting in PvP, and while it has the opportunity and the potential to do very, very well, I think it's definitely more suited for Blood Brawl, and while its 1v1 potential is there, it does have to deal with RNG and is really based on the meta at the time as to whether it can do very well or not. Hello everybody, and here we are at my house to do the little wrap-up summary thing on Shaman. Shaman is a simple tier 1 class, and meaning that its closest competition, the only classes that are really easier to obtain than it, that see any real use in the top tier of gameplay, are Oracle and Scarlet Sorceress. Oracle and Scarlet Sorceress are anomalies. Those aren't real classes that anybody should compare themselves to. And so I'm not going to count them when doing the comparison here as to how good is it compared to other classes. That its real competition is other single rank 10 rep classes. Glacial Berserker came out recently, I've done a video on that. Master Ranger and Necromancer and a lot of those classes, those are what it's being compared to here. And it's very good when compared to most of the other single rank 10 rep classes. Especially when you look at something like Glacial Berserker, that Shaman is a little bit of an older class now. It was redone, it was re-released and updated, and that was done early last year. And when you look at something like Glacial Berserker that came out very recently, that's almost a year after this class. And power creep is a thing. Classes get more powerful over time, and when Shaman can farm better than it can solo better than it, and while Glacial Berserker probably pulls ahead a bit in PvP, overall this class is still better than Glacial Berserker, even a class that has come out a year after this. If you're counting the rework. If you're not counting the rework, Shaman is like 5 years older than Glacial Berserker. And the fact that this class can still hold its own when compared with a lot of the top tier classes like Arc Paladin and Lightcaster shows how powerful and how good it is. That it's one of the top farming classes in the game, that I know a lot of people really love this as their daily driver farming class because it is so easy and mindless. You literally just push 2 and 3. That's all you're doing is just 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. And that's how you farm with Shaman, and that gives a lot of and that appeals to a lot of people because it allows them to just sit back, watch Netflix, watch YouTube, do whatever, while they just sit back and farm. And that is something that I do admire from time to time about the class. And the fact that it is so easy to obtain, and that it is so powerful, makes it very attractive to a lot of people. And the fact that it is the stepping stone to getting to Stone Crusher also means that many people are going to have the class anyway, that it's a very popular class anyway. So overall, I think this class is very good, placing it about an A- overall. It's probably an A in farming and a in soloing, but probably takes about a B- in PvP, bringing that average down a little bit. But overall, I think this still overall is maybe a low A, A-. And that's very good considering how easy the class is to obtain and how popular the class is. So, at the end of the day, I would recommend using Shaman from time to time. Try it out in soloing. I know a lot of people have used it for farming. Not as many people have tried it out for soloing. Go try it out against some of the boss challenge bosses, against some of the other bosses that you've used, and just see how you like it, because it does take a little bit of getting used to, but once you do, it's very good and can do some ludicrous damage numbers, and that's always nice to see. But, with all that aside, with all that being said, I'll let you guys go. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. If you guys liked the video, disliked the video, have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave those below. If you guys enjoyed this content and want to see anything else from me, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. If you guys want to click the social media links down below, that is a good way to get a hold of me. And as always, thank you guys for watching. If you have a great day, and I'll see you all next time.